Welcome everyone to the promise of deep tech manufacturing in the age of sustainability by SGInnovate and Startcentral, and in support of Deep Tech for Good. I am Zing from SGInnovate, and if you're new to us, we are a government-owned organization in Singapore with the mission to build deep tech innovations from Singapore for the world. We invest in and help build deep tech startups in the field of AI, medtech, and quantum tech, just to name a few. We work with entrepreneurial scientists and clinicians to help bring their innovative research from lab to market, and we also develop tech talent and engage with a vibrant deep tech ecosystem. Today, we are very excited to hear from our top leaders, Sharif Al-Sayed Ali, CEO and co-founder of Carbon Re, Pin Fen Fong, Vice President and Head of Advanced Manufacturing at EDB, Dr. Gary Ng, Deputy Director of Sustainability and Emerging Applications Center at Asta, in this panel moderated by Andy Wee, the General Manager of IES-INCA, as we explore the need for companies to find ways to remain competitive and sustainable with fewer resources and the opportunities and technologies in sustainable manufacturing. Just some house rules. During the webinars, if you have any questions during the event, please feel free to post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And do feel free to use the chatbot function to connect with our wider community. Before we begin, I'd like to hand over the time to Jackson from Startcentral to say a few words. Jackson, please. Jackson, you're muted.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jackson from Startcentral. For those who are not familiar with us, Startcentral is an open innovation platform by Asta to incubate and accelerate the growth of deep tech startups. We also hope to bolster the startup ecosystem with the help of partners like SGInnovate. Feel free to connect with us to find out how we can help you in your journey. Today, we are honored to have Andy Wee, the General Manager for Institution of Engineers, Startup Incubator and Accelerator, to moderate the session today. Andy has a strong background in product design and has currently supporting engineers and technopreneurs on their venture startup journey. Without further ado, I will pass the mic to Andy to introduce the panelists. Andy, please.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our event, joining with SGInnovate to tackle this topic, manufacturing in the age of sustainability. And we have very esteemed speakers today to share on this topic. I'll just let them do a quick introduction of themselves. We'll just start off the list with our speaker from London, UK. We have Sharif from Carbon Re. Yeah, welcome, and allow you to do a quick introduction of yourself. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andy, and it's great to be here this morning. Good morning, everyone. I am Sharif, co-founder and CEO of Carbon Re. We are an early-stage artificial intelligence and climate tech startup. We develop solutions, software solutions for manufacturers to reduce their emissions and fuel costs. It's great to be here. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you, Sharif. Okay, moving on, we have Ping Fong, who is the Vice President and Head in Advanced Manufacturing of the EDB. Let her introduce herself. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Pin Fen. I'm with the Singapore Economic Development Board. My team is responsible for designing and executing Singapore's national manufacturing strategies to drive transformation and growth of our manufacturing ecosystem. I'm very happy to be on this panel. Look forward to an interesting session. Thank you.
And lastly, we have Dr. Gary Ng from Asta Sustainability and Emerging Applications Center to introduce himself. Yeah.
Hi, Andy. Good morning. Thank you, everyone. I'm the Center Director for Sustainability and Emerging Applications Center, or in short, SEAC. Right, it's an innovation center under the Singapore Institute of Manufacturing Technology, also under Asta. Right, so the center promotes Simtex technology in the areas of sustainability, flexible hybrid electronics, and also medical device manufacturing. And in sustainability, we cover a range of technologies such as life cycle assessment, life cycle costing, waste and recycling technologies, energy efficient management, as well as water treatment and water management technologies. I look forward to the discussion this morning. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, speakers, for the introduction. And certainly manufacturing is a very important part of our economy. And with the sustainability team becoming more and more important, let us see what are the trends and things we need to take note of as we go forward in the new economy. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like speakers to answer a few questions here. To start off, from their own angle, we have Ping Fong from the government sector, we have Gary from the research, and we have Sharif from the private sector. Each of them provide their own unique perspective. What are some of the trends relating to manufacturing and sustainability that you are seeing in the market right now, and the moving trends that are emerging that is driving this theme in the future? Maybe I'll just start from Gary. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll start with the very broad general trend, the things that are very hot in Singapore, and that will also require a lot of R&D investment in. So there's a lot of things going on with the keyword circular economy, right? And also decarbonization, right? So of course, in a linear economy, we take raw materials often from nature, right? Make products out of it and finally dispose it as a waste. So the materials flow in a straight line. So right now we are going towards circular economy, where we use strategies and approaches like recycling, reuse, remanufacturing, and repair to keep materials and products in use for longer, right? So it's a closed loop system where we try to reduce the material inputs and the waste output. So there's a lot of technologies required in recycling, for example, right? So plastics is one example, right? As well as food and also electronic waste and so on and so forth. The other thing that we are focusing on is also decarbonization, right? It means basically to remove or reduce carbon, more specifically carbon dioxide, right, in the air, right? And it's also our answer to fight climate change and global warming, right? The goal is to move towards a low carbon economy that employs low carbon energy sources that reduces the emission of greenhouse gases, right? Especially carbon dioxide. And of course, in technology, there's a lot of research in terms of carbon capture technologies, right? And also low carbon energy sources like hydrogen, right? And also solar. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, maybe just to continue the conversation with Dr. Gary. So where do you see this journey of the circular economy? Are we at the start? Are companies starting to adopt this circular economy concept in a great way?
I think we are at the start, right? If you tell me maybe 5 years ago, not so much traction, but I think in the last couple of years, and also due to more awareness, education, as well as all the regulations coming in, right? We start to see more inquiries for companies coming to us for our life cycle assessment expertise, as well as how to recycle materials, right? In waste management as well. So we are currently even helping companies in terms of food waste management, right? Building equipment for food waste, biodigester, and also we have starting R&D programs in food waste management, packaging waste, as well as e-waste management. And you can also see that there's a lot of grant calls, right? Recently also, right? All the sustainability open innovation grant calls, right? So there's a big push by government in this area.
I can imagine how busy you would be at the moment with all the inquiries coming in to build that. Okay, let's move on to Ping Fong. Yeah, wanted to understand from Ping Fong's point of view. I think government wants to increase manufacturing in Singapore, and as you can see, manufacturing in Singapore has gone through cycles up and down. And with this sustainability trend coming up, do we see that we can take advantage of increase in manufacturing, plus also be sustainable as a new future for Singapore's manufacturing?
Yeah, so I think the concept of sustainability definitely goes beyond having, net zero emissions and carbon neutrality. All these are important, but as we look at manufacturing as a whole, we also need to take into account the resources and manpower that's available and how advancements in technology can actually make manufacturing more sustainable for Singapore. So one of the key trends that I want to talk about is really the extent of technology disruption is very often underestimated, right? And if you look at within the manufacturing sector, COVID-19 has definitely hastened the adoption of Industry 4.0 solutions, right? As companies leverage the use of automation, digital twins to actually get more transparent on their supply chain analysis, remote monitoring tools in factories to ensure a safe environment for their workers. But suffice to say, this is still very uneven across industries, right? So a recent McKinsey survey actually suggests 3 outcomes for companies. For those who have already scaled the digital technologies, is a big win, right, for them. It's a reality check for those that were still scaling. The bar has now risen, right, in terms of Industry 4.0 transformation, and really a wake-up call for those companies that haven't started on their I4.0 journey. So EDB actually did a study on the manufacturers' Industry 4.0 journey and identified a couple of challenges, right? So really there's still a general lack of awareness of what some of these Industry 4.0 solutions and the benefits it can bring to them to actually enable them to be more competitive and more sustainable in the long run. There is actually a lack of oversight on the current state of their facility. So you'll be surprised that many plant managers actually don't know where their strengths and weaknesses are, right? Because they are actually dealing with day-to-day issues. And really, there's also a limited ability to create a clear plan to target high impact areas, meaning that there is really limited resources and limited time and budget. What do I need to do first, right, in order to create the best return on investment? So that is unclear. And really companies also complain, right, to say that there's a lack of platform to connect manufacturers with solution providers. But if you drill deeper, actually the companies are not looking for solution providers. They're actually working for partners who can work alongside them to develop solutions specific to their needs and budget, right? So for EDB, when we look at all these challenges, and what we want is really for the manufacturing sector in Singapore to ensure, the companies here in Singapore maintain competitiveness, be sustainable, and hopefully, if we can, be best in class, right? So EDB created this Smart Industry Readiness Index, SIRI, back in 2017. So really, at the heart of it, the SIRI assessment matrix helped companies assess their facility across the 3 core elements of Industry 4.0, which is process, technology, and organization, right? Looking at technology alone is too simplistic, right? Manufacturing process and organization's ability to sustain the change is actually equally important. So we have actually gotten a lot of traction with SIRI simply because companies face a lot of challenges in trying to transform their facility. So we have been gaining quite a lot of traction for SIRI in Singapore, but also internationally as well. So the World Economic Forum is also now in collaboration with us to scale SIRI globally to help manufacturers globally try and catalyze manufacturing transformation. Yeah.
So Ping Fen, do you work closely with multinational companies or SMEs? And do you see any good examples of companies that have taken the plunge and moved forward in the sustainability direction? Yeah.
Yeah, so in the sustainability direction, I would say, it's still brown, right? And there's some shades of green coming on board, right? And it's quite clear for businesses on 2 fronts. So they need to respond to the concerns, sustainability concerns of the investors, right? So I recently spoke to an exec, whose company sell industry products like valves, controllers, sensors. And previously, actually industrial companies did really nothing for the product, which is end of life, right? So increasingly, they're also explaining that they're trying to redesign their products so it becomes easier to retrieve and recycle these products from their customers. So if you look at the consumer electronics companies, perhaps they are further ahead, right, on this road, right? But I think with the industrial companies actually now jumping on this bandwagon, I think we expect to see considerable efforts, right, on this front. And I think the second thing to note is that sustainability actually can lead to returns, right? So there is actually green growth opportunities across many sectors. For example, agriculture, energy, mobility. BlackRock, a global investment company, actually just noted in its 2021 global outlook that contrary to past consensus, it expects the shift to sustainability will help enhance returns. Right, so I think there is this big mindset shift already that sustainability is actually something that will give you returns instead of it's a cost issue, right? So and definitely within Singapore, for green growth, right, we are actually making a lot of push on this front. Right, so I'll give you an example. For example, in the agriculture, or maybe more specifically agri-tech, right, for Singapore, right, we are engaging many up and coming agri-food players, right. For example, Enable, an indoor farming expert from Germany, they have just announced plans to set up their global R&D center here in Singapore. This center will be co-located with their mega farm, right, to really enable rapid translation of research outcomes. In the areas of mobility, I think you're all familiar with the Hyundai Motor Group's Innovation Center. Actually, this is just a start, right? Singapore is actually also looking into a lot of things like autonomous vehicles. Aviation sustainability is also one of the R&D areas. So potential applications to urban air mobility, right? Maybe air taxis and maybe hydrogen powered aircraft, right? So there are actually very exciting opportunities in the areas of sustainability. And definitely, I think Singapore is well positioned to actually try and capture some of these green growth opportunities.
Thank you, Ping-Fen, for that. And certainly, it's interesting to know that many of the investors and also the venture funds are also looking to that, making sustainability an important goal, as well as seeing the good returns from there. And certainly leaving a good legacy for the future of our Earth and our future generations as well is very important. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to Sharif, who is deep in this space in enabling systems which can help to achieve some of these sustainability goals. What is your take on the future of this in what you are doing? And also maybe share with us your perspective from where you're at in London. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. So I think exactly what you just said is that there is this kind of a positive trend, is that there is a lot more, seeing a huge growth in investing in new climate technologies and new climate technology companies, which is very positive. I think maybe like a small sort of maybe part of that that's not as positive is that a lot of it has been, I think in the relatively trendy, maybe safe parts of climate technology, and less so really targeting what I call the hard to tackle sectors. So things like shipping, aviation, manufacturing, especially things like what we call foundation industries, cement, chemicals, steel, and so on. But on the other hand, we're seeing even a little, we're starting to see a movement in that space. So, there's a lot of innovation in shipping coming that I'm seeing kind of coming out of Singapore. And also there is, we've kind of seen the Bill Gates, his book that he released last month, where he's talked quite a bit about cement in particular, but also, and he's been posting on LinkedIn about that and so on. So kind of really saying, there is no net zero future without tackling these hard to tackle sectors. Something perhaps from the kind of asked about the London, the UK perspective. One thing that is, definitely quite encouraging, and seeing this in a variety of countries, that there is government investment in some of the sort of the big bets for the future, things like green hydrogen, like carbon capture and storage. So, for example, there is a big industrial cluster that's being developed that is a zero carbon manufacturing. Obviously, the issue is that is going to take years to develop, and we're running a little bit out of time. So I think time is our enemy in what we're discussing today.
Yeah, I saw in your website that you do some work in the cement side of things. Can you share with us more what happens there? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, the solution we provide, we're developing artificial intelligence-based software, a software platform for foundation industries in particular. So, cement, but also chemicals and steel. And others, and it's based on both research from Cambridge University, from one of my co-founders, that's looking at the how you can make the manufacturing process more efficient, particularly the process of burning fuel in the furnace, and as well as the use of electricity and how to sort of balance the use of electricity with low carbon, usually low cost electricity on the grid. So the idea really is to kind of solve that question that I think one of the people in one of the attendees is asking. How do you deal with this dilemma between sustainability and cost? And what we can do there is to essentially, by controlling the energy usage and understanding the energy usage, and based on kind of all this investment that manufacturers have been doing in IoT, so you have a lot of data. And by starting to do that, you can actually get to the point where you're both reducing your fuel usage, because you can do it, you can optimize it, and reducing, so you reduce your emissions, but also reduce your costs. So you can actually achieve that holy grail of the two together.
I understand. I think it also comes with this digitalization trend, which is very big at the moment, where factories become controlled from and measured and tracked from a dashboard quickly, and decisions can be made swiftly to move things in the right direction. Yeah. Okay, let's continue to Gary now. Yeah, I would like Gary to share. Okay, let's get down to the ground and see some of the projects that have been launched, with companies in Singapore, SMEs, or any particular case studies that you have seen that has made great impact in this manufacturing space and the sustainability space. Maybe share with us 1 to 2 stories on that. Yeah.
Okay, we have done many projects in sustainability over the years in SimTech. But if you want me to share, maybe one of them, the more successful, is we have developed this energy efficiency monitoring and analysis system, right? So basically, we install sensors, meters, collect data, right, on a manufacturing shop floor, right, and analyze the data, right, to tell where the hotspot and what could be causing those hotspots, and also propose solutions, right, to reduce energy consumption and also energy losses. So this technology has been transferred to quite a number of local companies, and we're still helping companies, right, adopt this technology, right. And also right now, in terms of waste management and also circularity, right, we're also talking to a company, right, manufacturing company who wants to introduce circularity into their manufacturing operations, and also using low energy sources like solar panel. So they have a new building, a new facility, and they want to do things like collect rainwater, treat and reuse the water, right, within the building, right, as well as turning some of their manufacturing waste into higher value products. So these are some of the couple of, so one is existing technology, the other one is a project that we're in discussion. Right?
And Gary, do you see any bottlenecks or any obstacles to help move adoption faster? For example, your energy solutions, are there enough people helping to get this to market? Yeah.
So maybe one thing would be awareness, right? So probably one thing we can do is to bring more awareness to the technology. So that's the job of my center also, right? The other thing is, of course, this technology for energy is just monitoring and analysis, and probably propose some solutions. I think the technology itself to resolve it, some of the issues, right? We'll need another set of expertise of people to solve the energy issues, right? Because this technology is more on the energy management level. We will need technologies, right, to solve some of these issues, different set of technologies. And some of them could be quite challenging, right? Of course, the other thing we try to encourage companies with our very strong in-house life cycle assessment and life cycle costing team, right? We would also a lot of times in our project within this component, right, to tell them, to convince them that if they adopt this technology, this will be the in terms of sustainability and also in terms of ecological sustainability and also economic sustainability, right? So in terms of business sense, it makes sense. In terms of sustainability, it's beneficial, right? So usually, like what we discussed previously, cost is we cannot run away from cost, right, and profits. So our expertise in-house would help convince some of this company, right?
Okay, I think there's lots of opportunities in what you're doing, and maybe some of the engineers, technopreneurs in this webinar might consider taking up some of these technologies and bringing it to market faster. Do you see resistance or reluctance at the leadership level, at the management level, to adopt some of these solutions, or are people already moving ahead? Yeah.
We do see a mixture, but I think things are getting better, right? As the customer are also demanding, right, sustainable practices, and also their customers. So a lot of time, actually, we are talking to the top management who are really the decision maker, right? So I think things are changing and faster, you know.
Okay, thanks. I guess it's at the moment still mixed, but soon we will see a big movement towards that. And I think actually as consumers, we can also make smart choices in choosing companies that build products that are sustainable as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me move on to Ping Fen. Okay, let's see. From your point of view, any companies or that you can highlight, or SMEs that you can highlight that are doing some of these things in a very successful manner and making very great impact at the moment?
Yeah, I will share on 2 case studies that Singapore has worked on and the value it brings. So the first case study would be on additive manufacturing. So I think it's quite clear. I think additive manufacturing will be the game changer for the manufacturing sector. It allows for also sustainable manufacturing, saving, materials and things like that. And Singapore has actually developed the ecosystem extensively over the last 5 years. We now have around 200 companies within our local additive manufacturing space. So the concrete value that was demonstrated was actually quite recently. So the made in Singapore 3D printed nasal swabs, I think if you all follow the news, it was actually developed by a consortium effort across private sector, research institutions, as well as government agencies, right? So by leveraging additive, right, the entire product development cycle, including patient trials, was completed within 7 weeks to reach production readiness and meet, obviously, our demand for 40,000 tests per day. Right. This actually has enabled rapid localization of production capabilities for critical supplies, right, medical supplies, and there's potential for export as well. Right. So the second area is actually in the areas of robotics. Right. So according to the IFR report, Singapore already has one of the highest penetration of industrial robots, right, in our manufacturing sector. But we know that actually it's not technology, right, per se, that will actually help scale and encourage adoption. It is actually the ability to understand customer needs and develop a business model at the right price to meet the needs, right? So over the next 5 years, the Singapore's plan for robotics will be to pivot to nascent services sectors, right? Especially in the areas of healthcare, construction, and environmental services. So like cleaning, right? So cleaning is the talk of the town, right? With COVID, you have these disinfectant robots going around. So to illustrate, right, through the National Robotics Program, it funded the development of what we call the Robotics Middleware Framework a few years ago, right? Essentially, the Robotics Middleware Framework, or RMF, is just a suite of software libraries that is ROS compatible. So RMF will enable many different and complex technology systems to talk to each other according to this standard framework. So what happens after this RMF was developed? A consortium led by CHART. So CHART is based in our Changi General Hospital. So it's the Center for Healthcare Assistive and Robotics Technology. So CHART brought together a couple of companies, Open Robotics and Hope Technique, right, to then build on this RMF, right, to develop something specific for the healthcare domain called RobiH. So if you visualize a hospital environment, which is a dynamic one with humans, with various robots, right, from different vendors performing different functions, and having to communicate with existing hospital equipment and even the building management system like lifts. So robots also need to take lifts, right? But they also need to be able to know where to run to if there's emergency, so they don't block the way for people, right? So all of these, right, the extent of the communication and interoperability is very extensive, right? So the RMF actually seeks to simplify all of these systems, right? So if you think about it, we use it in our healthcare system, right? If you extend the application of RMF to actually other dynamic environments, right, beyond healthcare, actually the potential is quite great. Yeah. So I think these are the two case studies that I feel the ecosystem in Singapore managed to pull together to actually provide value, right, in terms of need. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ping-Fen. And Sharif, how about on your end? How has the impact been for your solutions in the market? And any other examples you could share, that you see in where you're at in the space? Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe I'll so kind of one of the issues we looked at is in for example, looking at cement manufacturing. So it's about 6 to 8% of global emissions just from cement. And one of the issues that any kind of heavy industry manufacturing faces is that you have these sort of emissions that are very hard to move. So kind of because you have to burn often fossil fuels to get to the very high heats that are needed for certain processes, talking about 1300 to 1500 degrees Celsius. And what actually we found that, that there are unexploited efficiencies that are very, very significant. So we're talking about the possibilities of reducing emissions from the fuel-derived emissions by up to 20%, but at the same time as reducing your fuel and electricity costs by somewhere around 8 to 9%. So you are kind of achieving these two things of both getting the emissions down and the costs down. Now, one of the big kind of barriers to that, and this is sort of, I think, where the the innovation is needed, is that the ways to do that has been traditionally by, you have teams of sort of continuous improvement experts, sort of industrial process improvement experts, who do kind of a lot of the number crunching, a lot of the looking at the processes and kind of and optimizing them, and that is very time consuming and ends up kind of in terms of from an ROI perspective being problematic because it costs a lot of money, and you usually often you will have like external consultants coming in to helping to do this because you don't necessarily have that sort of big capacity in the company. And the key thing to that, the key solution to that, and what's enabled actually by this trend of Industry 4.0 and now kind of all the digitization that's been happening the last few years and accelerating now, is that you can start, if you do it right, you can start to digitize some of these processes. So you can start to turn some of this traditional way of optimizing into a software-based, highly autonomous approaches. And so this is very much what we do, what we're doing, and sort of enabling this sort of optimization at scale. So we can take it from one plant to the next, and from one country to another. Perhaps maybe so just something that we're seeing also is that one of the big sort of developments has been sort of the carbon pricing starting to spread across the world. So we've seen it being introduced in more countries, and in countries where they've already had some kind of carbon taxes or emissions trading scheme, there are plans to increase those. And this is going to be key in terms of at least sort of accelerating the adoptions of low carbon solutions, of innovation to reduce emissions. One kind of last thing perhaps I would like to add here is that we often hear about green hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and those are definitely key technologies that we're going to need in the future, but they're also, in terms of the large-scale deployment, they're quite far off, many years away, maybe a decade or two as well. But and we will get there. But what's very interesting, and we've done these calculations by, for example, the sort of the efficiencies that we're tackling would result in cumulatively a lot less emissions in the atmosphere than carbon capture, for example, adopted in the late 2040s or in 2050. And that's because of the cumulative effect. Even if you reduce today by 10% cumulatively over time, and the cumulative effect of CO2, even if you extend this out to the end of the century, it still produces a much better result overall.
I see. So Jerry, have you actually explored Singapore market so far?
Yeah, so we've been speaking to a few companies in Singapore, and Singapore is absolutely key to us. I mean, we're a global company. We are kind of talking to quite a few people in Southeast Asia, and definitely Singapore is absolutely key and somewhere where we'd like to grow and be an important part of the ecosystem.
Okay, great. How do you see the response from the companies that you have engaged? Are they thinking far ahead, or it's still driven very much on the bottom line?
I mean, the last year, maybe I call 2020 is the year of the climate pledges. Everyone's been making climate pledges. But we know that, and that's the start, that's the, we need to start there. But really, what we'd like to see is that 2021 becomes the year of, actually making these pledges into reality. So taking them into, we're doing exactly X, Y, and Z over this year, and that year. Because without that, everyone's talking about, there's lots of talking about, okay, we're going to offset until we find the solution. But offsets do not solve the problem, right? Offsets just do not cut the emissions. They're just meaning that you're doing something somewhere else, and maybe that's overall it may not even be adding very much to the whole global climate effort. So kind of going from that pledge to action is key. We're starting to see some movement, so that there is definitely interest. And I think Gary mentioned, there's a lot of the top management is very interested, but we need that to move faster.
Indeed. I think pledging is a good start, but now we need to move to action in the next couple of years, and we really need the leaders to show the way, both from the government sector, the private sector, and as well as the research work. Yeah. Okay, we're going to come to our Q&A shortly, so continue to send us your questions there, and then we'll come to it in a moment. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe to wrap up the discussion part, just to ask our three speakers here, what are their thoughts about where we are at on the sustainability agenda that they're encountering? How many of the people that they meet is putting sustainability ahead, and how many people is still putting bottom line profits ahead? Maybe just start from Gary. What is his feel of the sentiment on the ground now? Yeah.
I think I more or less talk a bit about that. Yeah. So I think it's still changing, right? In a good way. We are seeing more and more companies, right? Top management, right? Adopting sustainability practices, right? Into their business. So like I mentioned, right, at least in the last 1 or 2 years, we have seen a huge increased number of inquiries, right, to my center, at least in the areas of sustainable technologies, and also wanting to know more about what is life cycle assessment, for example. And also we are also in the midst of developing and launching even training courses, right, in SynTech, right, for company executive to attend and learn about what is exactly is sustainability and carbon footprint, for example.
Okay, seems like we have a lot of questions on the built environment and construction side. Do you have good technologies there that, you know, our audience can engage you on in this aspect?
Okay, the construction side, what we have done so far is in the area of applying life cycle assessment, right, tools, right, for construction. So, for example, as the architect or the construction engineer design the building, right? I mean, now they're using all the BIM models and everything, right? As they select and design, select materials and design, hopefully we could put a number to the carbon footprint, right? Even at the design stage, right? The other areas, construction materials, we are looking into it. We haven't have our own solution yet, right? Using different waste materials, right, to incorporate into construction materials like concrete, right? Could be your incineration ash, right? Or even for non-structural applications, using waste plastic, for example. Yeah, but I think construction materials in Singapore, in terms of the construction material, is quite highly recycled. I think it's more than 90%, right? At least in Singapore, right?
Okay.
But we're just trying to build other waste materials, right, to incorporate into concrete, for example.
Yeah. I think there's lots of innovation happening there.
Yeah.
Going forward. Okay, moving on to Pingfen. What do you think at this point in time? Is it 80-20 drive for sustainability and 20% for profit, or it's still 20-80 for profit? Yeah.
Yeah, I think most companies are still trying to equalize this equation, right, in their head, whether sustainability is going to lead to, you know, really benefits to their operations. So I just wanted to put it out there to say that actually sustainability, once again, sustainability doesn't really immediately, you know, link to, let's say, carbon abatement, right? So we can always think about sustainability in smaller steps, right? So things that are productivity related actually leads to sustainability of your manufacturing operations as well, whether you talk about energy efficiency or asset and equipment efficiency, right? Things like that. When you talk about sustainability, it also could, you know, it also could be related to quality issues, right, in your plants, right? If you actually do a product, you know, with a higher quality, right, actually you reduce rework and you reduce, you know, repairs, right, ultimately, and that actually increases, you know, your margins as well and your revenues, right? Sustainability can also mean flexibility, right? I think in this age and time, I think how do you actually manage your entire supply chain, your customers, or even your suppliers? I think all these planning, scheduling actually saves a lot of money as well, right? And it actually makes your plant also sustainable in the long run, right? And also speed, right? If you can get your products out to market faster, right? Actually, it also gives you actually a lot more, right, to work with, right? Right. So I think these are the 4 areas, and I believe that in Singapore we have many case studies already, right, of companies that have started, you know, some of these work, right? And so, for example, I give you an example. So Amgen is a biologics company. So they've actually used a combination of predictive modeling, visualization, right, across their entire biologics manufacturing network. So with those historical data, they are able to carry out and predict overall performance and quality, right? So with that, they can ensure uninterrupted supply, right, of medicine to their customers, because they have a good way of visualizing their performance and their supply chain, right? So with that, actually, it gives them, you know, better revenues, right, and better transparency of their entire process, and that's sustainable. That's sustainability to a company, right? Yeah, in that sense. So I think in terms of some of these areas, I think we need to look beyond really, of course, the carbon abatement and all these are very important as well. But actually, there are other areas that manufacturers should start to work on, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ping Fen, for that. And Sharif, how do you see the companies in UK versus Singapore? Do you see that the UK side, they're rapidly adopting some of these sustainability solutions in the manufacturing? Or do you see Singapore side or any other example, any other country or customers you have engaged region-wise that is leading this movement? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think you know, something that's you can kind of found amazing about Singapore is that there is a compared to most other countries, is there is really innovation is seen as something that you know, kind of is you know, is a very powerful thing, and there is a much more, you know, I see it as a much stronger desire for adopting new solutions in Singapore than in many other places. You know, the UK is not doing badly. I mean, there is you know, there's definitely movement. There's definitely lots of new innovative solutions being applied, but overall, I would say Europe in general tends to be a little bit more conservative in terms of changing the way things are, and perhaps it's, you know, the way the markets are set, or the way sort of the sort of customer relations are. But it's you know, the one thing to say here is that you know, and I think it's key, is that, you know, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation 5 years ago. It would not be the place where, you know, definitely in almost every forum you go where the sustainability climate targets and how to get there are, you know, one of the top items of the agenda. But from a business perspective, and I think as in the 2010s, you know, the idea that, you know, you had to be digital first, you know, you had to digitize. I think, you know, in the late 2020s and going into the 2030s, if you're not climate first as a company, no matter how big you are, then it's going to be very difficult for you to for any company to keep going, because there is going to be someone else who has invested in innovation, who has kind of gone through the harder part at the beginning to kind of to adjust their processes or change them or change their technologies. And they will be more climate friendly, and that will make them much more competitive, and they will be the ones that take the market share. So I think, you know, increasingly, it's not so much a choice anymore, but it's almost like an imperative for anyone who's looking beyond the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, I think Europe is leading a lot on the green initiatives in terms of renewable energy and all that. So I think much to learn from the Europe side, and yeah, we should go research that. Okay, let's move on to the Q&A segment. We have several questions here. Christine is asking about research in the construction material sustainability. I think Gary had already answered quite a bit of that, and a lot of recycling is being done. I think maybe Asta side can share more about that, to the industry so that they can have better visibility on that? Gary, like to add to the question by Christine?
Yeah, so like what I mentioned earlier, right? We are building capabilities in this area, right? More so in how we use waste materials, right? And incorporating into concrete, for example. So it could be plastic waste, right? And also your fly ash from your incineration plants. Those are examples. I know in overseas, people are also trying to use totally different materials like wood, for example, or different types of composites, right, as construction materials. So we are trying to develop and do something in it also. And also in carbon capture, people are trying to, pump in carbon dioxide into concrete, right, to capture the carbon, right, within the concrete. So these are some of the research that's being done, right, currently.
Okay, thanks. I think if you have more questions, you can always contact Gary to see what the center is doing and adopt some of those solutions as well. Okay, next question. How to encourage large companies, SMEs to be more sustainable, where ROI and profits are usually the focus? From Jenny. And maybe I'll ask Ping Pong that question. I think she has answered it in part, but maybe I think it sounds like people are looking to government for the answer. What do you think, Ping Pong?
Yeah, I think, I mean, Singapore, has always been the government has always been very pro companies, right? So I think whether you look at, support from government to help companies, improve, right, in terms of whether it's productivity or flexibility or sustainability, I think all these, whether it's EDB or whether it's Enterprise Singapore, I think there are available support, right, to companies, right, for them to take action, I would say. But I think there's still a lot of inertia, right, in the industry, simply because they are waiting. They wait and see, and they want to see if their peers are doing something before they act, right? So I think a lot of what we've learned is that, through actually the CV data insights that we've collected, we actually also plot out industry performance cards, right? So within each of the industries that Singapore has, right, we actually have the average scores of the CV assessment, and companies, if they have their own scores, they can actually compare, right, with their industry peers. Actually, this actually spurs quite a bit of discussion at least, right, within the companies, to say that, actually compared with our peers, we're actually very weak now in certain areas, right? Whether it's connectivity, whether it's intelligence, whether it's supply chain visibility and things like that, right? So they will be able to actually have that comparison, and this actually spurs discussion. It actually spurs companies to take action. And once they're ready to take action, actually EDB and ESG will be there actually to also support some of these transformation efforts. That's what I would say, right? And actually there are enough case studies out there to say that actually the ROI is not as long, right, as it seems. Right, and many of the solution providers are getting a bit more creative already. So they're saying, okay, I'll do performance contracting, right? So you don't have to pay for some of these capex investments. You pay when you save, right? And then we share the savings, right? So the technology providers and the manufacturers will share the savings. So there are a lot of these innovative business models that are already out there to actually encourage companies to try right, and pilot some of these solutions, right? But I think if you look at the reports out there about manufacturing transformation, a lot are stuck still in the pilot stage, right? Because they just keep piloting and they never really adopt mass scale, right? So I think this is something that we are also trying to encourage companies to actually scale a lot of these solutions across right? Yeah, and Singapore typically, many of the MNCs are actually regional headquarters, so they might have oversight over their plants elsewhere as well, right? So many of them have been using Siri to actually also compare plant to plant, right? And then see as a whole how they can improve, right, their manufacturing footprint in the region as well. So I think all these are a good start, right, I would say, but obviously we would love to see more of it, right? Because for Singapore to actually maintain manufacturing at 20% of our GDP going forward, and I think our minister has already announced that we're going to increase 50%, right, of the manufacturing value add by 2030. I think in order to do that, we not only need to attract, right, new investments, but we also need to ensure that many of our existing manufacturing operations, whether it's SMEs or MNCs, actually transform, right? And by transform, I mean, being more sustainable in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Ping Feng. I think benchmarking is a great start to compare how each of the companies and the companies are doing in each of the sectors, and certainly that will help to spur them to catch up if they are far behind. And yeah, we need to move pilots to life and to get more adoption into the market. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, see. Okay, Bob Guan is asking if we try to be more sustainable and we move things across to the other regions, are we helping them, or are we just pushing the issue to other countries and things like that? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody like to take that question? Yeah. I think at this moment there is a huge range and the industry is really changing quite a bit, and I think we need to have a mass adoption at the industry level, and that's where the leaders really need to talk and coordinate and share. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. So I think if you look at the regional manufacturing powerhouses as well, I don't think they are sitting and idling, right? So they are actually also making a huge push, right, in Industry 4.0, right? Despite the fact that their type of manufacturing products could be a bit more so-called labor intensive, right? But they are actually also looking to pivot their industries, right? So if you look at Malaysia, if you look at Thailand, you look at Vietnam, yeah. So I think everyone is talking about Industry 4.0, right, and how technologies can help them be more sustainable, right, and use less resources, essentially, right? So I guess, yeah, I don't think companies will find it very easy anymore to actually skirt this sustainable topic, even if they go to other regions. It will still be something that governments will look at. Yeah, that's what I feel. Yeah.
Okay, I see some questions for Edmund about ROI and making whether is it something that first world country adopts. I think looking at the trend, it's going to be across the board as countries and governments look more closely at sustainability, and certainly it will be harder and as long as more people believe in the triple bottom line, of sustainability, it will become more widely adopted, and as consumers become more educated and more aware of climate change and also the impact, they will also start to choose, and that's where companies have to move along with the trend. Okay, let's see. Okay, Carla has a question. If let's say dangers of running into efficiency paradox, where more efficient solutions attract more players, and then it doesn't become a sustainable business anymore, I would say, from that point of view. Would we run into a saturation very quickly at the people rushing into the market to solve some of this? What do you think?
I think these are all driven by market forces, right? If you have a good technology like very efficient LED, right, which benefits everyone, why not, right? And then the market forces, the businesses, whatever shakeout happens, it will take care of itself, right? I'm not sure whether I've answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is enough scope for everybody to play in the market. And if you look at the center that Gary is running, there is a huge wide scope for people to participate in. Of course, don't everybody jump into the same area and cause a big crash there, but look at different areas and spread out the efforts as well.
Yeah, I think if we have good things, we share with everyone, right? Make sure, yeah, everybody uses a good benefits everyone, right? Rather than keep it within a few companies. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, shall we like to add to that? Do you think there is a saturation or too many people looking at it, trying to create solutions for the market? Yeah.
I think we definitely still need a lot more solution, but also we need them to scale. I think that point is really important. Is that it's one thing to have something small happening somewhere and it's really good. That's good, but as long as that's not the main way we do things or the main way we use things, then that's not going to have a difference. And the LED example is a really good one. Is that we're always going to need lights, and the key thing is like, how do we get to the source? How do we get to, how do we change the key thing? So the things that we're always using on a day-to-day basis, whether it's lights or, cement or concrete or steel or, food. So the things that are the energy, cars, all of those, and really kind of get to the source, change these, make them more sustainable, make them as close as possible as to zero carbon. That's the way we're going to solve this problem, I think.
Okay, thank you, Sharif. I think to wrap up, we are running out of time. That I think everybody needs to play a part. We have a question from Damien that asks, 2030, 2050, can we meet our Paris Agreement target on emissions? I think it all depends on all of us, how we choose, how we adopt, how we implement, and our 4 engineers in the house here, how we create and communicate those good solutions to the market so that more people can adopt. I think it all depends on us, and we all need to work together to drive this sustainability direction so that we can have a better world moving forward. Yeah. So thank all our speakers for sharing, and certainly go check them out in the center that Gary is running, EDB's initiatives, and also Sharif's initiative on the systems that he's building. I will hand you to Zing, who will wrap up today's event.
Thank you, Gary, Pinfan, and Sharif for sharing your insights and perspective. And thank you, Andy, for your great moderation. It was heartening to see our audience actively participating in the discussion through the Q&A box. So thank you very much for tuning in and for your great questions. We do hope this panel will spark more discussion offline within companies to transform and adopt more sustainable technology and practices. We'll be sending a post-event email with the recording to the session and ways to connect with our speakers if you want to discuss more offline. SGInnovate and Startcentral will also be holding our next Promise of Deep Tech event in June, so do keep an eye out for that. Lastly, connect with us on our various social media channels, and we hope to see you at future events. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.